Back in 2017, I used to work at McDonald's. Now, during my time in McDonald's, I experienced a lot of things. I've seen things, I've heard things, I've felt things, but none of them even comes close to the level of incompetence in the story I'm about to tell you. The main antagonist of our story here is called Mr. M, and Mr. M was one of our managers. Now, for you to truly understand the lore behind Mr. M, I'm gonna have to delve a little bit into his backstory. So, in case you didn't know, in McDonald's, you work for long enough, you become a manager. Normally, you have to go through some trials and to be tested a bit, but in the case of Mr. M, that was skipped. And the reason why this was skipped is because, and this is the story that was being told around the campfire back in McDonald's. Basically, Mr. M used to work in a different store, in a different McDonald's, but he had some drama there. He had some altercations. So he was a normal employee back in his youthful days. And you know how in McDonald's and everywhere basically, whenever you clean up, whenever you use a mop and you clean up, you have to use those yellow cones. Those yellow cones are there just in case someone slips. They can't really say, oh, it's the restaurant's fault. No, it was their fault because the cone was clearly there. It was a danger warning. But if you mop the floor, you get it wet and you don't put the cone, then you could actually, the company could actually get sued. So what happened was a woman actually tripped and fell after Mr. M, you know, mopped the floors, and she said there was no cone. She didn't know, and she was pissed. And Mr. M said no, there was definitely a cone. I know for sure. I never make mistakes. Turns out, surprise, surprise, there we have cameras, and yes, indeed there was no yellow cone, and Mr. M was in trouble. He was in danger, and so was the company. So in order to avoid the drama, basically what they did was they just took him from that place and they moved him over to a new branch. And this new branch was really far away from his home. It's not really relevant, but when they moved him, they also gave him a promotion. They made him a manager. So he took it. Everyone was happy. He was no longer working there. The woman was probably told he got fired, and now he was a manager. So congrats to Mr. M for his newly acquired position. If you want to really understand how Mr. M actually was, it's very simple. If you've seen The Office, just think of Dwight. Mr. M was literally Dwight. Not only personality wise, but even he looked like him. He looked very much like him and he acted very much like him. I would have thought it's a parody, but no, it was a real person. Mr. M was literally Dwight from The Office. So just so you have a mental image of what we're dealing with here. I'll fast forward a couple of years, and I now work at McDonald's. I've been there for a few months, and our story happens at around lunchtime and during gap time. So first, I need to explain what gap time means. Basically, we'd have an undercover agent, a literal undercover agent, like a detective, come in at they said it was a random time, but everyone knew it was between 12 and 2 o'clock, which was called gap time. And this was the gap. I don't know what gap stands for, like maybe Greece analyst professional. I have no idea. But he would come in and he would order. It was like this every time. It was scripted. He would order a Big Mac medium meal, and he would basically just give us a grade. And if the restaurant would pass, they'd be like, "Yep, congratulations, you passed the gap test. Good restaurant, 5 stars, awesome job." So we had this once every 2 weeks, and once it happened, we knew there was no gap time for the next, until 2 weeks had passed, and this was gap time, okay? Which meant Big Macs, and it was only Big Macs. Big Macs had to be pristine, prime quality, which meant we were following the exact guidelines for the burgers. And the exact guidelines are really crazy, are something like after 20 minutes, you just yeet them out and you make new ones. And 20 minutes is pretty short. I'm going to tell you right now, outside of gap time, those burgers sit there for way longer than they should. But during gap time, it was pretty strict, and not only was strict, but you also had to make sure they look perfect. The patty had to be centered. The cheese had to go in a little, like, one cheese goes like this, one cheese goes like this. The exact amount of pickles. It was supposed to be down to an art. So and also it was lunchtime, and lunchtime, as you might imagine, was extremely busy. And in case you didn't know, the most popular burger by far is double cheeseburgers and just cheeseburgers. So double cheeseburgers and cheeseburgers just flying out. And at the same time, you got to make sure you have the Big Macs in pristine quality. Now, the system McDonald's has, or the one I worked in at least had, was you have a main manager that just sits there and looks at what's in the tray and calls out for stuff. So let's say they would say, give me, I don't know, 4 double cheeseburgers. Give me 4 cheeseburgers. You know, they would just call. I was the one grilling. I was on the grill. I was grilling the patties. I would put them on the bread. I would put the mustard and the ketchup, and I would pass them over to Mr. D. Mr. D was another manager, but you know, in McDonald's, managers sometimes work as normal employees. It's not really a big difference. Mr. D was a really nice guy. He was kind of a metalhead, but he was there basically doing my second half of the burger. So I was there for the main part, and I would just pass them over, and he would do the second part. And on top of that, we had one more person in the kitchen that would be on the opposite side of us. That would be on the chicken station. You know, McDonald's has the main products of McDonald's are the burgers, but you also have, you know, McNuggets and I don't know, a bunch of chicken burgers and veggie burgers and a bunch of other stuff. And you just have one person on the other side just frying stuff all the time. That person usually doesn't have, you know, isn't that busy, especially during lunchtime. So normally you would have that person resupply stuff for the patty maker for me. But we had this very, very nice and old lady working there, and she always asked me to bring her patties when she was in my station, because it was like a giant bag of patties. So I felt kind of bad asking for her for stuff. So this was gonna be my downfall. All right, so there is your setting. It's lunchtime. Mr. M is in control. He's commanding. He's calling out for stuff. You know, give me cheeseburgers. Give me cheeseburgers, double cheeseburgers, Big Macs, whatever. And then me and Mr. D are working on the actual burgers. I'm the number one person on the burgers. I like put the patties down and I pass them over to Mr. D. He finishes them, gives them over to Mr. M, and that's it. Normally, the rules say you can't make more than 6 patties per grill. It's a maximum number of either 3 double cheeseburgers or 6 normal cheeseburgers. But nobody really followed this because it was impossible to keep up with the crazy queues that happened at lunchtime. It was literally impossible to keep up. And everyone was doing at least from 8 to 16. People would do 16. I was doing 16 at a time, okay? I was a professional and I was really fast and I was really good. But it was really stupid and very dangerous because you literally stick your hand in a giant metal grill that it's bad. You have like boiling oil dripping from the ceiling on your hand. It's really bad. But it's what you got to do to keep up with the demand. Now Mr. M was following the rules way too strictly, and he was instead of saying, hey, there's literally no double cheeseburgers and we have a queue that extends to the back of the restaurant, bring me infinite cheeseburgers. Instead of saying that, he would go, Give me 3 cheeseburgers. And I would give him 3 cheeseburgers. I wouldn't even be like, the patties were still cooking and he would go, give me 1 more cheeseburger. Like, okay. So, you know, I finished the first 3. I put like 2 more patties for 1 cheeseburger, 1 double. And then he's like, give me a Big Mac now. I'm like, okay, I need to wait for the cheeseburger. You know, I wait for it. They open. I put the patties for the Big Mac. I make the Big Mac. And he wouldn't like think in advance. He wouldn't say, oh, the restaurant is freaking full. Give me an infinity of cheeseburgers right now. He was clearly struggling. So I kind of took things into my own hands and I just made 8 double cheeseburgers. Because he kept saying, give me 2, give me 5, give me 6. So I made him 8. 8 is 16 patties. That is the omega level, the maximum level possible. Like our grills physically could not handle more patties. I like filled that up. And I did it. I did 16 patties. I did 8 double cheeseburgers. I laid them on the desk, on the table for Mr. D to finish them. Because, you know, once the patties are done and laid in it's just put cheese, it's easy, okay? Then I realized I have no more patties in my little mini fridge. So instead of asking the nice old lady to go and bring me a giant box of patties, I just went into the freezer myself and I just got them myself. Now, meanwhile, Probably what happened was Mr. M called for one Big Mac, like he usually does. One Big Mac, please. I had no patties anyway, so I had to go get them. But I didn't hear him say it anyway because I was in the freezer. I go to the freezer. The freezer, by the way, the trip to the freezer and back is like 15 seconds. So I go to the freezer. I come back with the bag of patties. I put them in the thing, and when I come back, Mr. M was he was mad. He was furious. He was fuming. And I think what happened was he realized he was getting overwhelmed, and he probably tried to throw that on me. So basically, what he did was he came up to my face, literally moved over to me, came up to my face, and you know how those thugs do in movies when they like put their heads like next to you? Yeah, he went like that in my face. He literally went in my face and started yelling really loudly, "What the fuck are you doing? Why aren't you here? I need Big Macs right now. What the fuck are you doing?" And I was so embarrassed the whole restaurant because, he was literally yelling. So everyone in the kitchen was looking, the whole restaurant was looking, and I was just sitting there with my little bag of patties saying I just needed to get some patties. And he's just it was really humiliating, and I felt really bad and I was really embarrassed. On top of just feeling humiliated kind of, I also felt upset with myself that I didn't stand up for myself. I kept doing my job, but I hated it obviously. And at this point, this chapter is closed and we move over to the closing part. It's the same day, and Mr. M is in charge with closing. He's the manager on charge with closing. When you close the store, basically what happens is the manager in charge has to do the inventory, which means just counting kind of like how many cups we need for the next delivery, like how many cups, I don't know, buns, everything, right? To the whole inventory. And meanwhile, everyone else has to just clean the grill, get everything ready for the next day. Just basic restaurant stuff. The restaurant closes at 11. At midnight, we're supposed to leave. Now, Mr. M was, I think, I don't know how it's possible for him to have been so slow. I think what happened, I imagine, because that's just how he was, I imagine he literally went and probably counted every single cup, every single lid, literally everything. Whereas obviously it's going to take you forever if you go into the storeroom and start counting every cup. I think that's what he must have done, something along these lines, because everyone would just go, all right, we have like a kind of a box and a half of cups. Okay, bring us another box. But he probably just went and counted everything one by one, because we finished at 2 a.m. We finished 2 hours later, and like, because we're all waiting for him. And okay, at this point, my wife was getting kind of worried because we're not allowed to have phones on us. My phone was upstairs in our changing room, so my wife kept calling me. I wouldn't pick up. Eventually, I guess she panicked. I don't know. She called the restaurant itself. Mr. M picked up. My wife said, "What the hell is going on?" He explained, "Oh, we're just running a little late." And that was it, okay? Now, when I got home, I was obviously very upset. I was pissed. And my wife said she got mad for me, basically. And she tweeted at the McDonald's main branch, whatever. She said something along the lines of, "Why are your employees forced to work 2 hours overtime, after midnight?" Something like that. I don't know the tweet exactly, but it was something like that. And I didn't even know about the tweet until I got home, obviously. On the following day, I kept thinking to myself how bad I felt that I didn't stand up for myself. And I said, you know what? I'm going to actually file a formal complaint because this is not okay, just yelling at people like that. So I was determined to file a complaint. But to my surprise, when I got there, people were actually talking about it. People said that everyone was basically almost interrogated, asked to do a statement of what happened the day before. And I thought, wow, someone must have had my back. Someone said, yeah, this was not okay. This thing happened. And then Mr. T, here comes our new protagonist. Mr. T was basically the highest manager. I don't know. He was the branch manager. He was the manager. He was the manager. Okay. He had his own office. So Mr. T was was calling everyone in his office to basically give a statement. And I was really happy because I thought, oh, I get to express myself without even having to be too confrontational because they're the ones calling me to ask me what's happening. So here comes my turn. Okay, I go in Mr. T's office and I tell him like, what do you want me to do? Because I have this and this happened and I'm not happy. And he said, just here's a paper, here's a pen, just write down everything, the full statement, whatever you want to write. And I remember I was kind of nervous, but I wrote the whole thing. I said, I gave him the full story, the full scoop. Everything from lunchtime, the yelling, the closing late, everything. And now, at this point, I asked Mr. T, like, who was the noble soul that actually cared for their colleague? I didn't say that. I just said, I was pretty tactical about it. I said, what's with this investigation? Where is this coming from? Like, what exactly is going on? Like, who mentioned anything bad that might have happened? And Mr. T said that they got a call from the McDonald's HR that someone complained on Twitter. And that is why they're filing an investigation to see why we closed so late. There was no mention of Mr. M yelling at me, making a scene. Nobody cared. Nobody mentioned it. And I was like, oh, well, that was my wife. And when I said, oh, that was my wife, you could see, I think I remember the sigh of relief. Mr. T was so relieved and so happy that he probably has something to report back. He cracked the case. So he was very happy about that. He was like, oh, that was it. Oh, good. It was a situation like that. But the whole story with Mr. M was still there. I still filed a complaint. I mentioned that I want to complain about it. And the punishment was to come. Okay, Mr. M was in trouble. The same day, Mr. M got called into Mr. T's office. And for the first time ever, I remember, I saw Mr. T close his office door. It was actually locked, I think, but it was closed anyway. So you couldn't hear what's happening there. Usually it would just be kind of like a casual office. Everyone just went in and out. But now things were serious. Mr. M and Mr. T, Mr. M was getting schooled. He was getting punished. Obviously, I didn't really expect him to get fired or anything like that. But at least he would know that there are consequences to being a dick, basically. I was very excited to find out the results. I remember I was washing whatever plastic things we have to hold the chicken in. We had it right next to the office to one side, and I would just wash that in slow motion to make sure I'm there when the door opens. And the door opens, and Mr. T walks out with a piece of paper in his hand. And Mr. M just walked out and he went back to work. And Mr. T, with his little paper, goes to our paper displaying wall we have and sticks the paper on the wall. The announcement. Obviously, Mr. T leaves, and I take a look at the paper, and what does the paper say? The paper reads, "Congratulations, Mr. M, for promotion to something like first assistant manager." It was literally a promotion. Mr. M got promoted. You see this? This is my diary from back in 2017. I found it because we're actually moving. There's a lot of crap. I mean, I'm kind of cleaning it up here for the video, but we're selling our stuff, we're cleaning our stuff, and I found this old journal I've had, and I remembered I wrote in here that I want to tell this story on YouTube back in 2017, but I didn't want to say it then because, I don't know, I was paranoid and I thought maybe I can get in trouble by exposing or something. Well, now it's been 4 years and I think I'm safe enough. I don't think Mr. M's gonna come for me. I mean, why would he? He got a promotion. Maybe I even helped him get a promotion. So yeah, that's the story. It sounds like an episode from The Office, but I promise you it's true. I don't know what the lesson to be learned is. Maybe there's no such thing as fairness, or maybe it's just, being loud is the way to go. I don't know. But yeah, that's it for the video, guys. See you tomorrow. Peace.